In 1969, what people saw on television became part of their lived history. In the present, fragmented clips often outweigh direct instruction from teachers or textbooks because they are encountered casually but frequently. If half a dozen sequential videos challenge Apollo's authenticity, the repetition creates the illusion of consensus even without proof. The authority rests not with the accuracy of claims, but with how often they appear. This shift changes how errors affect credibility. In a solemn television broadcast, a factual mistake or visible inconsistency could disrupt the event's seriousness. In social media contexts, a misleading caption or oversimplified claim is easily absorbed into the stream without undermining the broader message. If one detail is dismissed, viewers can scroll instantly to the next short video making a similar point. The sheer volume creates resilience for the falsehood, while correcting the record requires patience that doesn't match platform incentives. The larger pattern becomes clear. Modern conspiracy content thrives not by producing coherent or well-supported cases, but through speed, recurrence, and emotional impact. Against such tactics, even the most thoroughly documented achievement in human history struggles for visibility. The competition is not balanced because the medium itself gives advantage to claims that trigger reactions quickly. At this point, the story moves beyond the recycling of archival material. Clips interpreting shadows and flags rely on reframing images from the 1960s, but the technological environment is changing again. And the problem grows sharper when so-called evidence need not come from archives at all. It can be designed, altered, or fabricated entirely from scratch. Enter AI. The deepfake era of evidence. For decades, the Apollo footage stood as the most recognizable imagery of space exploration. Astronauts framed by the harsh light of the lunar surface, a flag planted into regolith, the slow-motion descent of human steps across an alien world. But today's digital landscape has introduced a challenge that earlier generations never faced. Advances in generative tools mean that anyone with consumer-level software can quickly produce visuals depicting scenes from the moon that appear impressively real. Where conspiracy theorists of the 1970s imagined elaborate studio sets and hidden budgets, the modern equivalent requires little more than a laptop and a free account. High-quality fakes are far more accessible than before, and harder for casual viewers to distinguish from authentic history. This development has opened a new stage of doubt, one in which original evidence competes against synthetic material designed to feel convincing. Artificial intelligence systems for image and video generation have accelerated this shift. Programs modeled after Mid-Journey can output hyper-detailed stills from a single-sentence prompt, while newer text-to-video systems such as Runway or prototypes like OpenAI's Sora can stitch together entire clips. A request for an astronaut walking under studio lights on a fake lunar set may return a short video complete with lunar dust textures, helmet reflections, and movement that mimics reduced gravity. When fragments like this are shared without explanation, they circulate alongside authentic footage in ways that make origin unclear. Researchers at York University and Simon Fraser University note that consumer tools now produce outputs that once required extensive professional effort, lowering the threshold for convincing but false demonstrations. The situation is further complicated by how these systems occasionally generate hallucinations, producing fabricated details or events that look authoritative but have no factual basis. A scene may include stars visible in the moon's sky, or camera equipment seemingly reflected in a visor, errors that reinforce common conspiracy talking points. For viewers unfamiliar with the term, hallucinations describe the software's tendency to invent details with confidence, even when incorrect. Online, however, these imagined fragments often escape scrutiny, absorbed instead as apparent proof against Apollo. This has changed the tone of conspiracy communities. On Reddit, for instance, side-by-side comparisons circulate. one drawn from actual NASA reels and another generated by AI. Users challenge each other to spot differences, often admitting they cannot. On Discord groups focused on Apollo skepticism, custom clips are traded and modified, treated less like research material and more like collectibles. Even when these snippets last only a few seconds, their effect is disproportionate to their length. A single moment can prompt the thought, if a convincing fake exists now, who's to say the 1969 broadcasts weren't staged too? What once needed pages of argumentative prose is now embedded in a stray video file that merges seamlessly into a broader archive of content. This inversion undermines older rebuttals to the moon hoax claim. For years, historians and scientists explained that the Apollo program could not have been faked with the technology of the 1960s. The effects would have been too difficult to achieve. Today, even though their reasoning remains valid, the point resonates differently. To someone raised on synthetic video streams, the fact that fakes are now routine dilutes the force of the original argument. The barrier between speculation and execution has collapsed, creating a climate where every image, from Apollo photographs to Cold War footage, is met with the same question: is this authentic or machine-made? Fact-checkers now admit the balance of effort lies against them. Detecting manipulated media once meant searching for obvious mistakes, shadows falling at impossible angles, blurred cutouts, or disproportions. But modern generators handle these technical details automatically, leaving little trace of assembly. More concerning, fakes often appear clearer than genuine content. Apollo missions were broadcast using 1960s television cameras, producing images with low resolution and noise. When those grainy clips are compared against today's ultra-high-definition fabrications, the AI version can seem more believable simply because it aligns with modern expectations of photographic quality. What was once a limitation of period equipment is reframed online as evidence of deception. Archivists confront an uneasy paradox. They preserve reels of celluloid film, original negatives, telemetry logs, and lunar samples, each painstakingly cataloged to secure provenance. But when they share authentic scans on modern platforms, their work gains less traction than polished digital counterfeits. In feeds structured around aesthetic impact, flaws such as scratches or unstable contrast, the very markers that establish authenticity, are recast as indicators of fraud. Audiences raised on 4K visuals sometimes view the imperfections of genuine Apollo records as more suspect than the flawlessness of a synthetic clip. Space-skeptical groups exploit this reversal deliberately. Threads emphasize every visual artifact in the NASA archive as supposed proof of manipulation, then juxtapose those with AI videos that display no such anomalies. Their argument is simple: the real looks suspicious, while the fake looks smooth and complete. Viewers without historical context often gravitate toward the polished version. In this way, the narrative snowballs into a broader suggestion. If amateur creators can fabricate a convincing moonwalk today, surely professional governments could have fabricated one in 1969. Beyond public platforms, encrypted communities develop their own ecosystems of disinformation. Members exchange file libraries of custom footage labeled as documentary evidence. Some build multi-minute compositions blending archival clips with AI inserts, layering on subtitles, dramatic music, and professional pacing. Once compiled, these are uploaded widely, sometimes without disclosure of their origins. To a casual viewer scrolling quickly, they appear as credible leaks. The sense of discovery, finding what looks like hidden truth, cements the doubt more firmly, long before experts can intervene. This leaves fact-checkers stretched thin. They must establish both that Apollo records are authentic and that new forgeries are machine-generated. That two-pronged task demands more time and explanation than attention-driven platforms typically allow. While experts explain differences between 16 mm film grain, radiation flicker, and compression artifacts, viewers are already moving to the next short clip seeded with doubt. The imbalance between the ease of creating misinformation and the time required to refute it grows wider each year. A larger irony emerges from this pattern. Decades ago, scientists went to extraordinary lengths to document every aspect of Apollo, preserving lunar rocks, deploying reflectors still used in laser ranging experiments, and securing independent tracking records. International spacecraft, from NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter to India's Chandrayaan missions and China's Chang program, have since photographed Apollo landing sites and rover tracks. These physical, independent confirmations remain immune to video manipulation. Yet on social platforms, they compete directly with artificially generated clips, a context in which credibility is flattened. To many users, a verified scan from NASA's archive and a digital creation output by hobbyists carry equal weight in the same feed. Researchers at CEPR and elsewhere stress that while the risks of synthetic media are real, their existence does not erase the multitude of independent lines of Apollo verification. Moon rocks studied around the world, retroreflectors still functioning, and images captured by other nations' spacecraft form a dense web of evidence that generative AI cannot undo. Yet conspiratorial content thrives precisely because a simulated clip feels immediate and easy to share. For audiences encountering history in fragments, spectacle often eclipses rigor. The lesson for viewers is practical. No single clip, especially one without context, should be treated as proof. Cross-referencing with independent sources, not only NASA's catalogs but also international missions and professional observatories, provides confirmation that fleeting social posts cannot. Treating every striking image as settled truth is precisely the pitfall that makes algorithmic feeds so effective at spreading doubt. The Apollo case illustrates a deeper tension. In an information environment where credible archives and synthetic creations coexist on equal footing, trust becomes a fragile commodity. What conspiracy theorists once speculated about, Hollywood tricks and government collusion, is now simulated casually by software for entertainment or mischief. In such a landscape, the real battle is less about images and more about conviction. Can societies agree on what constitutes reliable evidence when every artifact risks duplication? These pressures shape how audiences think, but they also push different groups in different directions. If the nature of evidence itself feels uncertain, responses to that uncertainty are not the same across generations, cultures, or nations. Some see manufactured footage and grow more skeptical. Others rely instead on independent confirmations and maintain their trust. This divergence raises an important question: who continues to believe in Apollo and who no longer does? Who still believes and who doesn't? In 2025, belief in the moon landings no longer breaks down along simple lines of awareness. It reflects deeper divides across generations, regions, and political cultures. The most visible contrast lies in age. Older adults experienced Apollo as breaking news. For them, it was a defining memory witnessed live, imprinted alongside reports and headlines. Younger audiences, by contrast, do not inherit Apollo as lived event, but as fragments surfaced in feeds and short videos. Older people live the event. Younger people meet it as footage in feeds, and that difference explains part of the generational gap. Surveys conducted between 2021 and 2025, including the POLES and CARSI studies, show that while outright denial of Apollo remains in the single to low double-digit range nationally, younger cohorts are both more willing to say they are unsure about the landings and more open to conspiratorial framings when their first encounter is through social platforms or generative AI. The disparity is less about knowledge deficits than about how credibility is established in different information environments. Geography adds another layer. In cities, people are more likely to have access to science museums, planetariums, and university events that give Apollo a physical presence through artifacts and exhibitions. In those settings, the missions appear substantial, grounded in objects one can examine directly. In rural regions, far from such institutions, Apollo often reaches people only through screens. There, the absence of local reinforcement leaves narratives more vulnerable to the sway of online reinterpretation. The pattern is not strictly about education level, but about infrastructure, whether opportunities exist to encounter Apollo as part of the physical world. Politics intersects with this divide inside the United States. Groups that already distrust government agencies are more apt to frame Apollo as fabrication, consistent with their broader worldview in which official accounts are assumed suspect. Among audiences who place greater weight on established institutions, disbelief remains comparatively rare, with Apollo accepted as consistent with the technical achievements of its era. The lunar landings become one more symbolic stage for competing interpretations of authority, aligning the conspiracy less with scientific evidence itself than with cultural identity and political leanings. Outside U.S. borders, the landscape looks markedly different. In Western Europe, Apollo tends to be framed as a collective human accomplishment more than a nationalist project, and skepticism plays a smaller role in public discourse. Eastern Europe adds still another context. Cultural memory of Soviet monitoring during the Cold War sustains belief, because the USSR closely tracked and would have exposed a hoax. For many in the region, Soviet surveillance during that era functions as an independent verification of America's success. Where U.S. debates revolve around suspicion toward domestic authority, Eastern Europe often treats Apollo as doubly confirmed, validated by a historic rival. In Asia, current space programs shape perceptions in their own ways. India's Chandrayaan-3 and China's Chang'e missions have returned direct observations of the Apollo landing sites, detecting disturbance patterns and confirming human activity. NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter has long-imaged descent stages still resting on the surface, and Apollo's retroreflectors continue to be used globally for laser ranging experiments. These tangible points of evidence serve as robust, independent confirmations that AI fakes or viral shorts cannot counter. In India and China, the existence of this data dovetails with pride in national space programs, reinforcing rather than weakening trust. For many citizens, Apollo is not a distant Cold War story, but the first chapter in an ongoing international effort that now includes their own nations. This contrast between the United States and countries like India and China is striking. Poll data indicates that U.S. youth are more likely than their foreign counterparts to express suspicion about Apollo, while Indian and Chinese youth, raised amid visible domestic lunar achievements, maintain stronger confidence. What looks superficially like a paradox, greater belief abroad than in the United States, makes sense once cultural framing is considered. In new space powers, embracing Apollo aligns with national identity and validates present achievements. In the United States, doubt functions as a gesture of defiance toward political and institutional authority. Generational contrasts within countries further underscore that space programs and civic trust shape belief differently depending on context. In India, younger generations are more certain about Apollo than older ones, a reversal born from experiencing their nation's accelerating space accomplishments firsthand. In Europe and North America, the generational line tilts opposite. Youth, lacking lived memory and immersed in algorithmic content, are more open to doubt. Access to native spaceflight successes, or the absence of them, reshapes the plausibility of lunar travel in the past. Education systems amplify these tendencies, where national curricula teach Apollo in depth, with technical and geopolitical framing. Students retain a clearer sense of its context and credibility. Where Apollo is only briefly mentioned as part of a broader Cold War unit, the reference is less durable, and competing media stories slip in more easily. The difference between sustained instruction and cursory acknowledgement helps explain why uncertainty manifests unevenly across countries and classrooms. Patterns of media trust complete the equation. In societies where mainstream journalism retains authority, Apollo skepticism recedes, because public reliance on news sources reinforces the sense that the evidence is continuous and transparent. In places where the press is regarded with suspicion, Apollo becomes one more reference point in a broader narrative of manipulation and hidden truths. In such environments, even the best documented missions of the 20th century are vulnerable to reinterpretation.